Friends, this is a clock prophecy update for September 23rd, 2017. Now, today is the day that many Gentile believers waiting for early rapture will realize that their favorite prophecy teachers don't understand the Scriptures. As I've tried to share with these other teachers, Revelation 12:5 is not about the church. It is only about the catching up of 144,000 virgin male Jews who are the first fruits, according to Revelation 14:4, or group 1 of this end-time harvest. Whether the removal of the Manchild will be a one-day event or take place over a longer period of time, we don't know. But what we do know is that the four-part harvest prophesied by Jesus in Matthew 20 will take up to 42 months as described by John in the book of Revelation. We are now watching for the opening of the seventh seal because that is the context in which God calls His people out from among her, Revelation 18 verses 4 through 8, during the destruction of modern Babylon, when the great burning mountain, prophesied in Revelation chapter 8 verses 7 and 8, strikes the sea near Italy and incinerates the figurehead city of global commerce, which is Rome, and by extension the EU, and virtually all of Europe. These events may well begin before the end of 2017. However, I have issued a watch period of January 20 through February 5 of 2018 based on mathematical convergences that extend past the end date on the clock as discussed in recent updates. Let me repeat that no sign, however remarkable, represents fulfillment. We can't know when something will happen based on the timing of a wonder in heaven. Also, no prophecy of the Bible is confined to one 24-hour day. So even if the early harvest begins today, it won't be the final day of this end-time harvest. Please note that I have further annotated the four groups of harvest chart in the article discussing that topic on the website. So if you have already downloaded it, please re-download and print again for future reference. Now, there was no culminating event of the sixth seal last week, as discussed in my brief video, so I have no way of knowing whether we have in fact entered the half hour of silence, or if this gap in time is still in front of us. Both January 20, 2018 and February 5, 2018 remain critical watch dates. However, we should be prepared for the opening of the seventh seal and the start of early harvest as early as this year. A stellar alignment pointing to Revelation 12:5 and the catching up of the 144,000 virgin male Jews, referred to as the Manchild in the book of Revelation, occurred on September 23, which is today. And as you know, the rapture of the church did not occur, and I had no expectation that it would occur. I was hopeful that we might receive word, even as early as today, that at least part of the 144,000 had begun their own exodus. But it's really too early to know whether that has even begun, and it may have begun. Now, our proximity to that date, to September 23, to this stellar event, means that the start of the four-group harvest may yet begin later this month, or it may be tied to the early months of 2018. As I've pointed out many times, no sign, however remarkable, represents fulfillment. I want to now provide a September 2 update that I was unable to make a video for earlier due to some technical issues, and catch you up to speed on some other topics here. In late 2016, copies of my book were sent to every prominent pastor and evangelist in America including Mark Biltz of El Shaddai Ministries, I believe in the state of Oregon. Pastor Biltz was first to discover that 4 blood moons would fall on key feast days of the Hebrew calendar in 2014 and 2015. This is also one of the most important monographs in my book, showing a divine link between Passover in 2014, where the blood moon converged with Revelation 12 verse 1 and Psalm 78 verse 13 at exactly the same hour on the clock as it occurred in real time. In case you're not aware, Psalm 78:13 is a verse that refers to the original Passover of the Hebrews who crossed the Red Sea. So it's quite remarkable that that occurred at the exact same hour on the clock as Revelation 12:1, describing the birth of the Manchild, at exactly the same time as the blood moon on Passover in 2014. That's how I knew that Mark Biltz was given this as a true sign of where we are on the timeline. Now, several days ago, when listening to a July sermon by Pastor Biltz, I was amazed to find that he is teaching a central theme of my book concerning the divided harvest and why there is a delay for the foolish virgins who become separated from the rest. While the modern church believes the virgin parable in Matthew 25 is a portrayal of the wheat and tares, I show from Scripture why this separation instead points to a 4-part harvest and an order of redemption supported by the words of Jesus in Luke 12:36. Quote, "Be ye as men who watch for their Lord when he shall return from the wedding." Unquote. I would also like to point out that in Revelation 6:6 we have a reference to each of the 4 harvests by reference to the particular crops that are analogous to those groups: the barley, the wheat, the wine or grapes, and the oil or the olives. I am not aware of Pastor Biltz sharing the divided harvest doctrine until after receiving a copy of my book, but to be clear, he has not contacted me about this. I would like for him to have mentioned my book during his sermon, but I am delighted to know that he is sharing this biblical truth with others before we reach the start of the 4-part harvest prophesied by Jesus. You may recall that September 2, 2016 was the end date on the clock of the 4-night watches. We entered the black ring portion of the clock 1 year ago on September 2 of this year. I have continued to search for the end of a 2-hour delay that I was shown, which on the clock is equal to 521 days, a period of 17 months and 11 days, or the length of 1 watch on the clock. While I was never told what event this delay was meant to bring us to, I now believe it points to the opening of the 7th seal and the start of early rapture, which is tied to the stellar alignment we refer to as the Revelation 12 sign that occurred today. A 2-hour wait from the end date on the clock exactly 1 year ago on September 2 may give us the final calculation of this end-time message before the arrival of critical mass on the clock, and with it the catching up of the first rapture group in Revelation 12. Adding 521 days to September 2, 2016 takes us to February 5, 2018. Let me point out, however, that this date in 2018 is just 16 days after the end of 42 months, counting from Revelation 13:3, prophesying a near-fatal head wound to the first beast, which fell on the clock in August of 2014. I continue to believe this 2-hour delay has been pointing equally to that event, since a deadly wound to Barack Obama is tied to critical mass on the clock. Chapter 6 of my book explains all about that. Both January 20 and February 5, 2018 are now key watch dates for us on the clock in the days ahead. That doesn't mean that something can't happen sooner or later, but those are watch dates in this end time message. The first trumpet of the seventh seal is the trigger event for our entry into Revelation 13. But what exactly is it? John describes it as follows. In Revelation 8, verse 7, he says, "The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up." Now let's add the second trumpet. This is the next verse in that passage. Quote, "And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain, burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood." Unquote. I believe these two trumpets may be part of the same event. A meteor large enough to reach the planet's surface creates enormous pressure beneath it. Therefore, a blast zone can form before it even makes physical contact with the Earth. Trumpet 1 may simply be part of this effect as the meteor strikes the ocean. On the other hand, it may be a volcanic eruption producing, quote, blood, unquote, in the form of lava that John saw as fire and hail falling back to the earth. Now we have news of the Katla volcano in Iceland reaching a point of critical mass based on a seldom violated 99-year period of containment that runs out in November. A looming strike against North Korea may also bring fulfillment of the earlier trumpet, as a rain of fire is an apt description of modern warfare involving missiles and other types of guided artillery. In either event, I expect Kim Jong-un's assassination and Obama's near-fatal head wound to take place at virtually the same time. The clocked end date at Revelation 19:15, 1 year ago, earlier this month, marked the Lord's judgment upon those who come against Israel at Armageddon, which I now believe to be the war of Psalm 83. The edict of a 7-nation consortium denying Israel its capital city just weeks after the clock ended was a signal to the Arab world that Israel is largely without support in the global community. This will soon trigger Pakistan's Erdogan and his Arab neighbors to move against the Jewish state as the seventh seal opens. It may be that President Trump becomes compromised in some way that allows those aligned against Israel to make their move, or cover may be found during extreme levels of social unrest following a near-fatal attempt on Barack Obama, as prophesied in Revelation 13, verse 3. The effects of a meteor strike off the coast of Italy destroying Europe would by itself be sufficient distraction for the enemies of Israel to unleash their unholy war against her. Since we may lose internet access during any one of these events, I can't be sure when I may have written my last update, so please check back and remain in prayer as we are running out of time. God bless as you continue to hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Behold, I come quickly. This is Peter John Brandel.